Hey, everybody. Welcome to this very special Mayday podcast. I'm Julie Roginski here with my co-host, Michelle Kinney. And today I am thrilled, honored, fearful, joyful, all of the emotions to have Congressman Tom Malinowski on with us. Tom Malinowski is not just kind of my platonic ideal of what a member of Congress should be, but he just got done with a very, very, very tough primary race in New Jersey 11, in New Jersey's 11th congressional district. That is the seat, for those of you not from New Jersey, that would fill Mikey Sherrill's seat. She obviously won and became governor of New Jersey. That seat was vacant. It was the first election of 2026 for Congress. And it is a seat that is expected to go Democratic in April, which is when the general election is going to be. Tom did not win. He came up a little short, and he just conceded yesterday to Analilia Mejia, who is a organizer, was the political director for Bernie Sanders in his last presidential election, a longtime member of the Working Families Party, a good woman. Full disclosure, I worked not on Tom's campaign, but I ran Tom's a PAC in support of Tom Malinowski, not a dark money PAC. We told people exactly where our money was coming from, and we happy to do that all day, every day. I don't run dark money PACs, but I'm thrilled to welcome Tom Malinowski to the podcast, Michelle, because his campaign was about so much more than just this one congressional race, and I cannot wait to talk to him about it. So with that, let's bring in my friend, Tom Malinowski. Hi.
Hello.
Hello. You're looking alive and well. You're hanging in.
Hanging in there.
Tom,
heart's beating.
Yeah, heart's beating. I want to put this in context because I want to just talk about maybe how you and I got here today. I was, and I'll never forget this, last summer, sitting by, ironically, just based on what ended up happening later, by the Sea of Galilee. As one does. As one does in Israel, which played quite an interesting role in this election. And it was late at night there, and I got a call from you. And you said, I think I'm going to do it. I think I'm in. If Mikey Sherrill wins this gubernatorial race, which we all expected her to do, but we know you never know. I'm going to run for Congress. And I did not miss a beat. And I said, wherever you are, I'm there. Whatever you want to do, I will be there. And I'm not the only one that said that. There are people who worked for you when you were in Congress, which was several years ago now, and people who knew well before that. All of us signed up without any hesitation. I think you're probably one of the very few people that somebody can say that about, that people just follow you where you go. And so we did, and we tried our best, and we came up a little short. And by a little short, I mean, just a little short. We don't know what the final tally is going to be. They're still counting votes. The final New Jersey law allows you to count absentee ballots up until a week after the election. So by tomorrow, those votes, any absentee ballots that have come in, will be counted. But you conceded yesterday to Analilia Mejia, and I want to ask you, I don't know if this is the first podcast you're doing after that concession or whether you've spoken to others. I know you've certainly spoken to the media, which we don't count ourselves as before this, but just your thoughts on everything that happened since that fateful phone call last summer that you and I had.
So I knew I was in trouble maybe 8 or 9 days ago when I was campaigning at a train station, which we do in New Jersey, because that's a great place to meet a lot of voters in a short period of time. And a couple of folks came up to me and said, "Oh, you're Tom Malinowski. Wait a second. Are you MAGA? Are you pro-ICE?" And this was weird because I'm obviously not those things. I was, the whole point of my campaign was to be the most authentic anti-Trump fighter among a group of Democrats running in a primary, and running on my record, having been in Congress, standing up to this guy, talking about how I was the first Democrat in Congress from a swing district who came out for Trump's impeachment in 2019. And I'm also an immigrant who I'm just, to say I'm beside myself over what we're seeing in Minnesota and what ICE is doing would be an understatement. And I was running on that as well. And so why would people be asking me those questions? And well, the reason, as you guys know, is that in the last 2.5 weeks of the campaign, an actual dark money group started running ads that were completely ubiquitous. Just they spent millions of dollars, where almost every ad people were seeing on television was claiming that I supported funding ICE. People were getting 3 or 4 mailers a day in their mailboxes. There were phone calls from overseas call centers telling people this. And the dark money group is one we all know by the name of AIPAC, the kind of the most hardline pro-Israel lobby in the United States. Why were they doing this? Not because they care about immigration or ICE, or even that they're Democrats, most of them who run the organization are not. They did this because they decided that even though I'm pro-Israel, I wasn't perfectly pro-Israel enough for them. And so they decided to try to murder me in this race. And we were leading, according to all of our internal polls. And in fact, we know now that I won all the early ballots that were cast. I mean, not all of them, but we were winning comfortably with the early ballots. But then people who made up their minds late and voted on election day, that's where we lost.
I want to, I guess I want to stress a couple of things. One is you had a 100% pro-Israel voting record in the House when you were there. Now, some people may not be happy to hear that, who are on the chat here or watching us on Substack, but the reality is you were a staunch ally of Israel. And so I want to be very clear about what AIPAC did here. You call them a pro-Israel lobby. I don't actually think they behaved in a pro-Israel way by doing what they did. In fact, I think, and I said this publicly, I think what they did in this race is bad for Israel. It is bad for Jews in Israel. It is bad for Jews outside Israel on every level. And I'm speaking for myself here. I think it is bad all around, and it sends an awful message. I think they're a pro-Netanyahu organization, but as I would argue, I'm not sure that he's good for Israel or good for Jews in the diaspora, or frankly, for most Israelis, and most Israelis don't think he is. Part of it, what I think was so painful, as you said, is that until AIPAC got involved, you were winning this race and you're winning it handily. We see that not through polling or data, but we see that through the fact that absentee ballots, as you said, were coming in overwhelmingly for you, so much so that the worst possible thing happened, which was that the networks called this race for you. And
God. Yeah.
It's almost like being left at the altar. It's just well,
it was great. Just to really quickly, my husband and I are watching the returns. We're like, I'm hitting refresh on the New York Times, and I'm like, oh wow, he's got it, and then we see everybody start to call it, and then it starts to seem, and Julie and I were texting, and she was like, I don't know, something's changing, and my husband goes, no, that never happens. They never call it and then walk it back. I'm like, this might be one of those times. And it was really painful, at least, as an outsider looking in. I can't imagine how you were feeling in that moment.
Yeah, I still haven't replied to all of the congratulatory texts I got in that 2-hour period. And, like you put yourself out there and
yeah,
that happens, right? That's part of the experience. But look, what was one of the very great disappointments for me was that, as this was happening, we knew we were under attack in this way. I was really hoping to be able to say at the end of the election that it failed, that these ridiculously dishonest attack ads, which, you know, if we still had local media, would have got that out to people, because the media covered them actually very well. There was a great New York Times article about the dishonesty of the ads. But I wanted to be able to say, look, it failed. Dark money can be defeated. Other Democrats can learn from my experience and stand up to groups like that. And unfortunately, we kind of narrowly missed the opportunity to be able to say that. Julie's absolutely right. This was weird in part because I am kind of mainstream pro-Israel. My sin in the eyes of AIPAC was that I was unwilling to tell them that I would support unconditionally any request for assistance that comes from Prime Minister Netanyahu, which makes no sense to me. One of the causes that Julie and I share in common is support for Ukraine. In fact, here's my Ukraine sweater I'm wearing right now, randomly. And if somebody were to ask me, would you support unconditional aid to Ukraine? I'd say, no, you've got to be kidding me. Like, I want to do everything to help them win and survive, but that doesn't mean that anything that President Zelensky of Ukraine asks for, if he asks for 18 tractors with machine guns on top and, you know, like, you know, I want a shark with like a machine gun.
Lasers, like an Austin Powers.
Lasers, right? No, like, we get to use our own judgment. We get to advise them on strategy. We get to say, no, that wouldn't be a good idea, or we don't like how you're using something that we've given you. And what AIPAC is insisting on for Israel is something that makes absolutely no sense from a foreign policy standpoint. And yet there are plenty of politicians who just out of fear say, yes, absolutely, no question. And so I wouldn't do that.
Who is that? How many are left, do you think, on the Democratic side, who are too afraid to say no to them?
Well, we'll see. You know, I was hoping it would be less after this race, and maybe it will be, because this is a conversation in the Democratic Party, because of what happened in my race. But you know, there are probably more Republicans in this category who are, I would say, performatively pro-Israel.
Well, right.
So you go to their office on Capitol Hill, and there's a giant Israeli flag hanging off on their door. They'll wear the Israel flag pin. They'll just say, I stand with Israel. And that's about as much as they're willing to think about the issue. They don't actually have a connection with the country. They don't understand. They don't have Israeli friends. They don't understand its complexity. I mean, the more you actually care about Israel, the less likely you are to just take that blind, unconditional support point of view, because you know that there are times the government of Israel behaves in ways that are self-destructive, that are not in the interest of the people of that country. But there are plenty like that because it's just easy, because you get the money and you don't get any hassle. And there are still a lot of single-issue pro-Israel voters out there for whom that matters.
Yeah, you know, I've been grappling with this for the last week, or actually longer, really ever since AIPAC got into this race, which is to what end, right? Because I was tracking this through the PAC that I was doing. You, I'm sure, were tracking this through the campaign. You and I couldn't obviously talk about it, but now that this is all over, we can. I mean, what I was seeing, which is I'm sure what AIPAC was seeing, is that the person who was going to get elected, if not you, was going to be the woman who ultimately got elected, Analilia Mejia, who's a lovely woman, but she is not, you know, she was the only person that said that what's happening in Gaza was a genocide. And again, you might agree or disagree with that sentiment to people who are watching right now, but the reality is that's not what AIPAC stands for, and that's not what AIPAC supports. And the question is, what were they after? Did they not understand what they were doing by opposing you? And I have to come down ultimately to the belief that this was not a stupid, unforced error, which maybe it is, but I can't imagine they're that dumb, that this was maybe a message to send to other Democrats that if you step out of line, or Republicans too, if you step out of line, we will do to you what we did to Tom Malinowski. Doesn't matter.
Yes, I think it's two things. Number one, this was the first election of the midterm cycle. And so it was a good opportunity for them to flex their muscles and to say, we will destroy any candidate who doesn't sign on the dotted line. Number two, I actually think that they had a specific problem with me. In fact, they told me that. I had a conversation with them just as this was building, in which an AIPAC official told me, look, Tom, we get that you're pro-Israel, but you're not 100% with us, right? There are a couple of things you said that concern us. And some of our members, quote, worry that you'll be influential in Congress. The Democrats are actually going to listen to you. The implication was that you elect somebody who doesn't believe that Israel should be a Jewish state, who's, you know, more on the kind of squad, far left side of the party, that, yeah, that's very bad from AIPAC's point of view. But they're not as worried that the Democratic Party will listen to that person. Whereas because I've been kind of a foreign policy leader in the party and I am more moderate, they worried that I would actually move the party more effectively in a position that they didn't like. And, you know, okay, I take that as a compliment.
Yeah.
That was actually kind of the whole argument of my campaign, that I'd actually have some stature and influence in Congress. I wouldn't be a freshman. And so I think on some level they preferred to elect somebody who is like totally anti-Israel, anti-Zionist, to somebody who argues for a different policy, but from a genuinely pro-Israel point of view.
Well,
and that's a message to the kind of the left of the party too. You know?
Yeah, yeah. Like they don't want any real, they don't want any real challenges. Yeah.
Than someone who's more in the kind of AOC Bernie mode.
Right.
Yeah, and what's fascinating is you ran, you know, you continue to be a progressive Democrat. So the only, it's like
on a lot of issues, yeah,
a lot of issues. And the biggest tragedy to me, one of the biggest tragedies to me here, is that, let's put Israel aside. You talked about Ukraine. I mean, you were the conscience of the party on Ukraine longer than almost anybody else. I mean, you really were, and probably the biggest expert, one of the biggest experts on Ukraine and generally on foreign policy. And so if you are somebody who cares about foreign policy, as we all should, if you're somebody who cares about Ukraine as one of the early theaters of World War III, which some of us believe it is, you know, the short-sightedness of this is just, it's just astonishing to me. But I also want to ask you more broadly about this fight against dark money, because it's not just AIPAC. It is, thanks to Citizens United, completely taking over every aspect of our world. And I said this earlier, you know, of all the PACs I've ever run, I've never not disclosed the donors. We'll always do it. We'll do it. You can run a super PAC and not have it be a dark money PAC. But, you know, what do you make of this? That this has just become the way of the world now, where fewer and fewer campaigns actually care about raising money from $3,500 a clip into their funds, and more of them just want to go to somebody who's going to write $1 million, $10 million, Elon Musk, you know, $50 million check in order to get them over the finish line.
Yes, or who are simply afraid that someone will do that on behalf of their opponent.
Right.
And therefore they'll censor themselves. And,
right.
And so who has that power right now? I mean, AIPAC, I think they've got about $90 million amassed in the super PAC that ran those ads against me. That's a lot. But there are larger ones. The cryptocurrency companies have started a PAC that has raised about $190 million. And the AI companies have basically unlimited money right now that they have said that they are going to spend against anybody who wants to regulate their industry. Now, let's think about that for a second. Like, our Middle East policy, it's important to us, but it's not going to affect the life of every single American. Artificial intelligence is probably the most rapid and transformative development in human life that we have seen in our lifetimes. The effect it's going to have on our economy, on our democracy, on our kids, on education, on our ability to discern the difference between reality and non-reality. And it's happening incredibly fast, and these multi-billion-dollar companies that are deploying the super intelligence right now are less regulated than a local pizza shop wherever we live. And the fact that they are potentially threatening to do to any candidate in the midterms who threatens to actually safeguard this technology, exactly what AIPAC did to me, is really, really scary. And like, I get it. Like, if you're, let's say you're a Democrat running in the midterm somewhere and you've got a really close race, maybe you're in a primary. Very few primary candidates for House can raise millions of dollars at that stage. And so you're not going to have the ammunition to stand up to some huge super PAC that puts $5 or $10 million into your race. And by the way, these groups never attack you on the issue that they care about.
Yeah.
So like AIPAC, they weren't running ads saying Tom is not pro-Israel enough. That wouldn't have worked very well. The AI companies, like, they're not going to say, you know, Julie it wants to regulate AI too much, because that would help her.
Right.
So they will come at you with personal smears that you don't have the money to push back against. And so, like, yeah, a lot of particularly House candidates, they're going to be scared of that. And the only solution, I think, other than repealing Citizens United and reforming our campaign finance system, which won't happen in time, is for the Democratic Party collectively to say, go fuck yourselves to these groups, and to embrace what I think is the popular position on these issues in a way that's really wholehearted and public, so that you at least get the benefit of being on the popular side. And like, our next presidential candidate is going to have $1 billion.
Yeah.
So we'll be less threatened by the amount of money that super PACs have. Like, the higher up you go, like from House to Senate to presidential campaigns, the more empowered I think we should be to stand up to this and to just fully embrace where I think the American people are on these special interest groups and what they're campaigning for.
Do you have the sense, and I'm sure you've heard from some of your former colleagues in Washington, do you have the sense that the Democratic Party as a whole is willing to jump off the cliff together, holding hands and saying, fuck you, crypto, or fuck you, AIPAC, or whoever, we're not going to be held hostage? Or do you think they're like, yeah, Tom, you know, it sucks to be you, and hopefully that's not going to be us next time, but we're not going to take the risk?
I don't know. Look, it's a collective action problem.
Right. Yeah.
If everybody does it together, we'll be strong. If they pick us off one by one, we'll be weak. So I don't know. I'm certainly going to preach this to my friends. I know they're pissed off about what AIPAC did in my race. I like, including members of Congress who have had close relationships with AIPAC. I know there's been a lot of screaming behind closed doors. How could you have done this stupid thing? Whether they turn their backs on the money, I don't know. But I actually think, look, accepting help from AIPAC was already not the most popular thing in the Democratic Party, which is why they tend not to endorse candidates now openly. I think after my race and the intention this has gotten, it's going to be even harder. I'd like that to translate to some of these other big tech industry groups as well. And I'm definitely right that overwhelmingly public sentiment is against them across party lines. Like, MAGA families are as concerned and creeped out by what AI could do to our lives as progressive, democratic, liberal families that's not a partisan issue. So I actually think there's a huge political advantage for whichever party or candidate seizes on some of this stuff. Crypto as well. Like, how many people say, I don't want to regulate cryptocurrency. I like scams. I like money laundering. I really want drug traffickers to be able to just run wild with that stuff. You know,
Right.
Right.
come on.
Well, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Julie.
The only thing I was going to say is crypto has also done a very effective job of muddying the waters, right? Like you've got all these ads of Matt, I don't know if it was Matt Damon, but whoever it was, all these celebrities who are kind of doing Larry David, heartbreakingly to me.
Yeah.
But I mean, all these people who are doing all of these crypto ads to make it look like this little benign thing and it's not such a big deal. And it's just, and so, and then you remember that the only news that's happening right now, there's nothing else in the world happening besides Savannah Guthrie's mother's tragic disappearance. And so you see that they're trying to get money into a crypto fund, right? So like it's consistent that it is something that's used for criming.
Yeah.
Look, we actually polled this in my race.
Right.
Because when you run for office, you do polls that test different arguments and messages. And the argument that I would stand up to Trump's crypto corruption was one of the best polling arguments that we had. And we did put it in our ads, actually, explicitly. The idea that like the president and his family run a crypto company and foreign governments can buy his cryptocurrency to essentially bribe him into lowering tariffs or treating those countries better. I don't need to convince most Americans that that's not a good idea. So it's there for any party or candidate who wants to run with that and is willing to risk getting slimed. And that risk is lower if we all go in on it together and we effectively message and communicate that that's what's happening. So I hope at the very least our presidential candidate sees that opportunity, because whoever that is will have the resources to fight back.
Don't you think that the dark money and the crypto piece of this, like it's really another piece of this like larger problem that unites everyone? Is we're dealing with the politics in a country of the have and the have-nots. We have the oligarchs and the people with the money, and then we have everybody else. And I think that, I just think about talking to just regular people being like, I don't understand, first of all, what crypto is. I used to run a super PAC up until a couple months ago. And I remember when we were fundraising during the presidential, someone came to us and were like, there's some crypto groups that are looking to, get involved here and like try to make their, their agenda heard and maybe make some ads or something. And I was like, no. I was like, we need money, but I don't know. First of all, my husband's a banking regulatory attorney. I don't know how I feel about any of this. But I was just like, not all money is good money, and I don't like the idea of this at all. But I think it just speaks to like the bigger thing that people hate about politics. And also a big reason why people, I think, voted for Donald Trump is they thought that he was selling, this idea of anti-corruption and all these people are corrupt and I'm going to put all these people away. And obviously we all know that's bullshit because, the Biden crime family and all of that. But, I think that there's a message and a story to be told from the Democratic side this year and in 2 years that this is the bigger power and the bigger money at play. They're trying to pick your politicians for you because you have nothing and they have everything. Like, what do you think?
Yes, and it comes back to Julie's point that it's a lot easier to raise money from one billionaire than from 10,000 regular people who can afford to give you $100, $500, $2,000 even. And so that just makes those oligarchs, billionaires, people with concentrated wealth more powerful.
Yeah.
And this is like going back to AIPAC. AIPAC has tons of members across the country. They're mostly Democrats, but their biggest donors right now are a handful of pro-Trump billionaires. So that definitely influences the decisions that they make. It's true of institutions outside of politics, foundations, museums, ballet companies.
Oh yeah.
It's easier to get that one or two huge checks.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
the more concentrated the wealth, the more that happens.
Yeah. I mean, JD Vance ran for Senate with $15 million check from Peter Thiel.
Yeah.
Like that was it.
And the market, which is like having $50 million in the New York market. I mean, that's just,
yeah.
I will say this. I mean, this is something that I do know a little about because I've made it my business to know about it. And maybe Tom, you do too. But in your case, the people making decisions at AIPAC, from the head of AIPAC on down, including the main person in New Jersey who was making that decision, from what I understand, is a Republican. And so for people who wonder what happened, you had Republicans picking, I wouldn't say they picked the eventual nominee, because that's not at all what they did. They were supporting somebody else, not the woman who ultimately won. So I don't ever want to take away from her that she did an incredible job of harnessing this opportunity for herself. She did. But the people who decided they were going to take you out in a Democratic primary were not Democrats. They were Republicans.
Yep.
Yeah.
Trump Republicans, actually.
But here's one of their weaknesses. And this is true for AIPAC. I think it's true for a lot of these industry political action groups. They still need, or they think they need, to be perceived as bipartisan.
They're not.
They're not, but that's an important part of their identity. And their legitimacy. Like, no, we're not Republican, we're not MAGA. We just believe that America should dominate the world in AI, or we just believe that crypto empowers small businesses, or whatever the argument is, or we just believe in support for the Jewish state. And so if the Democratic candidates do what I would like them to do and just collectively say, no, we're not taking your support anymore, we're shunning you, that would be an existential crisis for some of these groups. Again, AIPAC, most of the members, even though they're not relying on them so much for the money anymore, most of the members are Democrats, and they don't want to be the Republican pro-Israel organization with that membership base. So force them to make that choice.
Yeah. Think of no labels. Yeah.
And what you're seeing is that generation of Democrats within a decade is going to leave the scene. I'm not suggesting there are not people our age who are not supportive of AIPAC, because there are, including here in New York City, where Michelle and I are. But the Chuck Schumers of the world, right? That cohort of politicians, they're fading. I mean, they're fading because of age. They're fading because of relevance. Ultimately, I think it's this newer, younger squad cohort that is coming up. And maybe that's what these Republican donors want. Maybe they want to elevate the squad to make it look like, look at this, and they're so extreme, and make it more palatable to elect Republicans. Maybe that's the long game. But I think actually that's not even it. I think it's just a very short-sighted view of what this means for the state of Israel, because they think the good times will last forever. And I'm here to say there are a lot of unintended consequences as to what's happening right now. And there are organizations like J Street and others who've been screaming that from the rooftops. And I think your election truly underscored that you could have 99.999999 with a little infinite bar over it % of what you want. Or you could say the perfect is enemy of the good, and I am going to make sure that I send a message to everybody else not to deviate. It is a very short-sighted viewpoint, and I think it probably doesn't just apply to AIPAC. It probably also applies to crypto and to others.
Yeah, they're all single issue and forces in our politics, and they've discovered this power. They're flexing it, and there's no. The only reform, the only change in law that can end it, unfortunately, because of the Supreme Court, requires a constitutional amendment or a different Supreme Court.
Right.
We're not going to have that in the next few years. So I think it can only be fought politically.
Yeah.
But because popular sentiment is very much on our side, on the good guys' side, both on the substantive issues that these groups care about, and popular sentiment is very much against dark money.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something that Democrats can harness. And so we either give up, give in, or we do that. The party is kind of in between right now.
Yeah.
And
I wanted to ask you, what you were hearing from voters, at the doors, at your events. Because obviously the Democratic Party is a big tent, right? There's a lot of ideas. There's a broad spectrum. But it seems to me that people care less about that now, and they just want people who are going to fight.
yes,
Fight against the regime, fight against Donald Trump, and not take the playbook of 1994 and think that it's going to work in 2026. What were people telling you out on the trail?
telling me that. Yeah, they're again, this is a Democratic primary, so we're talking.
Yeah.
And they're incredibly upset about ICE and the mass deportation and the images of violence by masked thugs in Minnesota. They're concerned about loss of democracy and freedom of speech and rule of law. And then when we get to affordability, all those things are related because tariffs push prices up because Donald Trump doesn't respect the constitutional authority of the Congress to set tariffs. And they want leaders who will, not just fight it, but fight it effectively.
Yeah.
And my argument in the race, which was working pretty well, was that I had a track record of doing that when I was in Congress before, and experience and knowledge that I tried to convince voters enable me to be an effective fighter, not just a performative one. So, and I don't think it's, at least in my opinion, I don't think it matters so much whether the Democratic fighter is more on the left of the party or the center of the party, as long as people believe that you have that fighting spirit, that you're projecting confidence and strength, that you want to take it to Trump and restore decency and democracy with no compromise on those principles.
Yeah. It's interesting to me that you had, I don't know, 15, 14, how many people were in the primary?
Ultimately 11.
11.
Yeah.
But there were 4 people who were considered to be in the front runner status, I guess, of those 11, although one of them I don't think was particularly a front runner. But you and Analilia Mejia were the fighters, right? You were sort of the I wouldn't say anti-establishment necessarily because you were a former congressman, but I mean the people who were ready to take it, fight for it, and whatever else. You had a woman who was the former lieutenant governor of New Jersey, who was AIPAC's choice, even though they never admitted it, but that's who AIPAC put their money behind to try to elect. And then you had somebody who was endorsed by pretty much every party boss in the district. And so it's combined. I mean, the overwhelming number of people who supported you and Mejia supported people who were fighters and who were not necessarily the old party boss establishment wing of the party. And I think that's fascinating and instructive for anybody who's running right now in any capacity. I think that's probably something that people should take a lesson from, not just in your district, but all over the place.
Yeah, we were two faces of the same thing.
Yeah.
Very different faces. One a Latina woman coming from the progressive wing of the party, identified with Bernie Sanders, and me, I look more establishment. I'm a middle-aged white guy running more on experience and having been an insider, but also stressing that all of that everything I've done, everything I've learned, every skill I've gathered, every experience I've had, I would combine all of those things to try to take down Trump and fascism. And I think the lesson there, at least to me, is kind of what Gavin Newsom is saying, that we need to be as a party from Manchin to Mamdani.
Mm-hmm.
Right now. This isn't the moment when we're going to figure out Medicare for all versus a public option. This is a moment where we have to unite fighters from every wing of the party to rescue the foundations of our country's democracy so that in 3 or 4 years, we can still have debates about what our precise economic and tax policy should be. And so that's the lesson I draw from the race. Some people are, there are people on both wings of the party who want to look at every race and say the outcome proves we need to go more to the center, or the outcome proves we need to go more to the left. I don't think this race proves either of those things. And I don't think that's something we need to settle right now. We need to be united.
Michelle, question?
Well, yeah, I mean, I wanted to ask a question, well, toward the end that kind of had less to do, well, I guess a little bit like this. I went down a rabbit hole and I was watching some of your older interviews. I saw one with Lawrence O'Donnell from a number of years ago where he talked about that you worked together, that you started out together working for Senator Patrick Moynihan. And I was so fascinated with that. He was like an adjunct professor towards the end of his life at Syracuse where I was. And so I had him in my class a little bit. And I wanted to just hear a little bit about what it was like to work for him, especially then. And I just thought that was so interesting.
Pat Moynihan that was my grad school. I actually did go to a grad school, but like that was really my grad school. He was, on the one hand, an Irish politician with working class roots who I think was beloved by union voters in New York when he represented them. But he was also this professor who wrote a book every single year and spoke with this almost affected upper class accent at a time when that was still possible in America, and who made all of us on his staff become the #1 experts in the country on whatever issue we were helping him with. And so I had, a couple of years between college and my real grad school learning from him. And it had a huge, huge impact on me.
Yeah.
And one thing that, I learned from that is that people actually like political leaders who respect their intelligence and who treat them like they're intelligent.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
well,
what a guy.
Listen, we're going to let you go so you can
no, let me go.
We're going to let you go of a stiff.
This is therapy for me. I need,
We could keep going if you want.
Yeah. That's why I wanted to get my question before we went, but if you want to stay.
There are people there's about 4,000 people on Substack right now watching this who have a ton of questions, but I'll ask you a question before we let you go then, if you want to do some therapy.
Sure.
What the hell's going on with Tulsi Gabbard and this whistleblower thing? Do you have any insight into what could possibly be happening?
I mean, I've got no inside info, obviously.
No, I know, but any ideas and thoughts based on the fact that you are deeply experienced in this particular field?
So what we know, at least what has been reported, is that allegedly the intelligence community intercepted a conversation between someone in Russian intelligence and a person associated with Donald Trump. So you can speculate and guess who that might be. Maybe Steve Witkoff, right? Like pick your favorite.
No. Actually, they said it's nobody who is either a member of the administration or a special, whatever the Steve Witkoff's designation is. So it sounds very much like it's a member of the Trump family.
So member of the family. Okay.
That'd be Jared or somebody like that. Yeah.
All right.
Or
pick your favorite one.
Right.
And when the intelligence community, that they don't spy on Americans, so they would not be listening into Trump family phone calls, assuming it's that. But when they listen into conversations by, say, a Russian intelligence official, if that person happens to speak to an American, it gets picked up.
Right.
And that often creates delicate situations. You can't not report it, at least to a small group of people in an administration. And so the story goes that they did what they were supposed to do, and they told the director of national intelligence, who, instead of distributing it in a limited way through the formal channels, took it to Susie Wiles, Trump's chief of staff, to ask, what should we do with this? Because maybe it's potentially embarrassing or explosive. and then came back to her office and said no distribution, which would be, if true, pretty bad.
Illegal, right? You have to notify?
I don't know. I want to be careful.
Yeah.
I know to be true, but certainly not irregular, not proper. And that doesn't mean you would distribute it to hundreds of people in the government, right? But probably, you know, the highest level officials, the director of the CIA, the Secretary of State, the president, the vice president, these people would probably should know this. And also potentially the Gang of Eight, the congressional leadership and the chairs of the intelligence committees in Congress. And so the story goes that there was a whistleblower who has risked his or her career to inform through proper channels legally the congressional leadership about what happened. And so that's all we know. All of that sounds credible, knowing the people, knowing the players on stage.
Yeah.
None of that is hard to believe. And the truth tends to out in Washington. Very few secrets are kept.
Tulsi Gabbard, asset or useful idiot?
I think useful idiot.
Useful idiot. Yeah.
Look, but she came into this job fully believing in Putin's worldview.
Mm-hmm.
But why? Asset or because useful idiot? Again, that's
I think like probably just genuinely believing in it.
Right. Did you served with her, didn't you?
Raised in a cult. I mean.
Yeah. I mean, we served together, but she was hardly ever there. She was missing votes all the time in my first term. She was off doing whatever she was doing. And so, yeah, no, I mean, this is Trump too. Like, I've never really believed that Trump is an asset or has been blackmailed. I think he just believes that the world should be organized in the same way that Putin believes it should be organized. There should be a few big countries with big, powerful leaders who divide up the world and the spoils. And we shouldn't have international law and values and morality and anti-corruption rules. Those just get in the way. And so why shouldn't we be friends with Putin? I mean, that would be a great world.
Yeah. Well, what about Epstein then? So there's all these theories going around that he was, was he an asset? Was he working for everyone? Was, highest bidder he would give intelligence to, blackmail information? I mean, what do you think?
I'd like to know. I felt like the money part of the Epstein story is probably the most important to our interest, to the kind of world that we believe in. Obviously, there are human victims who should come first, but from a public policy point of view, like we need to know this.
Yeah.
At the very least, he seemed to be just a broker of information.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you think it's fascinating, though, without going down rabbit holes, that even after he was convicted, the first time convicted, after he got a sweetheart deal from Alex Costa in 2007, 2008, which was during the Bush administration, obviously George W. Bush administration, that administration gave him a sweetheart deal, that he continued to crime, basically, and Obama did nothing. It's understandable why Trump did nothing, but Biden did nothing. What's that about? Like, do you have any theories as to why subsequent administrations just did nothing to stop this? When, by the way, if anybody on this chat was on Meghan's list, they'd be within, forbidden from even crossing the sidewalk to the nearest school. I mean, while this guy was just allowed to do whatever he wanted to do for, decades.
Yeah, I think that's what offends a lot of Americans and should offend all of us, that there's this kind of hidden world of powerful, wealthy people who are protecting each other. And, I think by the time Biden was president, this was already, there was a legal process that would have taken precedence over anything else that the administration could have done. But before that, I don't know. I plead guilty, right? I mean, this was, I guess, in the news when he was first given that deal, and I probably didn't pay. I didn't pay any attention to it. I think the public didn't know most of what was going on. But the people who were involved with him should have known by that point who they were dealing with.
Yeah, one would think. And speaking of local reporters, Miami Herald was really the only newspaper that was reporting on it in any meaningful way, until years later.
Yeah. And he obviously learned no lessons, right? He just continued to do this stuff. And one of the mundane things that strikes me as weird about it is that he's using his personal email for all of the criming.
Well, but that he didn't learn his lesson, or did he feel such a sense of impunity? And I guess the question is, why would he feel such a sense of impunity, right? Like, if you had dodged, I always went, well, let's use the former senator from your state, Bob Menendez, right? He dodges a bullet. He dodges a bullet. And I say this with a broken heart because I love both his kids, but he dodges a bullet. And the next day, he kind of starts criming again. And if this were me, if I had dodged that kind of bullet, I mean, first of all, I would join a monastery. I'd be praying to whatever deity I started to believe in that day, because I don't really believe in any at the moment. But if I would be joining whatever, some Buddhist monastery somewhere, and you'd never see me again, because I would just be on my knees thanking God that I got out of this. And the same with Epstein. And yet, is it just the sense of impunity? Why did Epstein, having gotten the best sweetheart deal of all time, believe that he could continue to do this? And was it because he somehow understood that there was a sense of impunity?
It must be some combination of that, and he just couldn't help himself. It was just in his nature,
I guess.
That's what I think. I think the human nature part of this, it plays a big role, because I think Robert Durst, right? Remember Robert Durst, the documentary, the murdering guy? He was criming in the murdering sense, over and over, right? And was getting caught kind of not right until then. He was on the run and stole a sandwich at Wegmans. Do you know what I mean? Why would you do that? It doesn't make any sense, except for the fact that, and that's how they caught him. Because I think that some people I don't know, they get a thrill out of it, or there's human nature. They just keep pushing the boundary of what they can get away with, until they run out of room.
Well,
the story of the scorpion and the frog.
Yep.
I don't. What's that about?
My nature. You don't know. Well,
you don't know it?
No.
Tell the story.
Please.
So, the scorpion walks up to a frog on the banks of a fast-moving river, and the frog is obviously a little scared, but the scorpion says, "No, don't worry. I need your help. I need to get across the river. Will you carry me on your back and swim across?" And the frog says, "Well, no. I mean, you're a scorpion. You're going to bite me and you're going to kill me." The scorpion says, "No, that doesn't make sense. If you're carrying me on your back and I bite you, then we'll both sink and drown." And the frog thinks about it and says, "Oh, okay, that makes sense. Hop on." And halfway across the river, the scorpion stings the frog. And the frog says, "Why did you do that? Now we're both going to die." And the scorpion says, "I'm a scorpion. It's my nature."
Wow.
Yeah.
I always thought somebody needed to tell the senators who confirmed Kash Patel and RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard that do you not know that story? They're
right.
They're going to tell you they're not going to sting you if you confirm them.
Or the people who think that Donald Trump is not going to screw them like he screwed everybody else who's ever worked for him. There's not anybody who's escaped working for Donald Trump, but yet somehow you're Pam Bondi.
You're the special one. You're going to get away out from under his. Yeah.
You have now failed to indict Jim Comey. You've now failed to indict Tish James. You've now failed to indict all these senators and members of Congress, including your friend Jason Crow, who spoke out against you. But somehow it's okay. He'll forgive you for it. Okay. So you go before the House and you tell Jamie Raskin he's a shitty lawyer, which is what happened today. I don't know if you saw that, but it was astonishing. One last question, and then we really will let you go, although not for good. We're going to keep bringing you back here anytime you want for these therapy sessions because they're good for us too. Ukraine. in a very, I know this is not a short answer, but are things just getting more and more difficult because of what this government is not doing to help them, or do you think it's a stalemate?
I mean, even with the difficulty, I think it's still a stalemate, but with more death and destruction and less opportunity to teach Putin and all the Putins of the world the lesson that they deserve to be taught. So, I think more Ukrainians have died in the years that since Donald Trump became president than in any previous year of this war.
Mm.
We're not providing any aid. The Europeans have stepped up, but they can't compensate for what has been lost from the United States. And then you have this constant charade of a peace process where Putin understands, he's learned behavior that if he says no to the latest proposal from the Trump administration, Trump's next move will be to tell Zelensky to compromise more. So there's not a huge incentive for Putin to actually do anything reasonable.
Should we give offensive weapons like tomahawks? Is that something you would have supported?
Yeah, give them anything at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, not unconditional aid. As
I'm about to say, we don't believe in that.
Right.
Anything that I think would be useful, and yeah, tomahawks would be. And they now have permission to use pretty much anything, and they've done these amazing deep strikes as far away as Siberia, as you know. Congress needs to pass sanctions legislation, and really smart sanctions legislation, because what the Republicans have been pushing, like Lindsey Graham, is a bill that would empower Donald Trump to impose tariffs on countries that are helping Russia, like China. And because they know Trump loves tariffs. But I'm sorry, Trump is not going to impose 100% tariffs on China for more than about 48 hours before coming out. So what's needed are mandatory sanctions against companies and entities and oligarchs and shipping companies and the actual institutions that are helping Russia stay afloat.
Yeah.
And mandatory.
Okay, I lied, because Heidi, who is one of our very loyal viewers, said 2 questions, Julie. What is Tom doing next? And I don't want to put you on the hot seat here, because you guys, it's been less than a week. Give the poor man a break. But I'm not answer for you. So you want to, what's next besides going and having a stiff drink as soon as you get off this show right now?
My dog Otto informed me at the start of the podcast that it's past 4 o'clock, which is walk time.
Okay. Right.
So I'm going to do that. I don't know. I want to stay useful. I'm going to stay involved in politics. I don't know how. I have a lot of energy, as hopefully you guys can see. Mm-hmm. And that's all I've ever known how to do. I want to be part of our collective effort to bring this country back to normal. And, I'm open to ideas.
Guys, he's not terminal. He just came up a little short. We're not losing him. He's going to be there for us.
Yes.
Can't lose him.
That's cheerful.
Yeah, we're
confused.
We can't lose him sounds very dramatic. Like, we're not sitting there pumping his chest, beating on him, praying that he's going to
like he's still alive. He's
still here. He's still
in the
here.
game.
And whatever Tom Malinowski does, it is going to be phenomenal. And so whether it's in public service or in the private sector, I'm so happy that everybody in the thousands of you who are watching on Substack, thank you. And the thousands of more who are going to be watching this in reruns, thank you. Also, I hope everybody here sees what we have seen for all this time. Tom, you don't know this, but Michelle and I host a morning show every morning, and we talked about your race quite a bit. And I kept saying, if you're an NJ11, I never ever tell anybody who to vote for. But we all came up a little short. It doesn't mean that we're not so incredibly proud of you and just the wonderful public servant you are. And more importantly, having worked for a bunch of people, and I keep saying I need to go atone for all my sins because I've elected a bunch of scumbags in my life. But Never in my life was I prouder to work for anybody than to
Mm.
help your campaign this time around.
Thank
Try
you.
to hold the finish
Thank you
line.
both.
So, thank you for being here, and we're going to bring you back and go walk auto, and we'll see you soon.
Great.
All right. Bye.
Great to see you all. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.